Harbor City International Airport was a symphony of chaos. Rolling suitcases clattered over tile floors, urgent announcements crackled through overhead speakers, and the hum of travelers rushing to catch flights filled the air. The scent of overpriced coffee and stale pretzels mingled with the faint tang of jet fuel. Officer Ava Brooks moved through Terminal B with practiced ease, her boots clicking against the polished floor. At her side, Bolt, her Belgian Malinois partner, trotted with his usual alertness. His sleek fur glinted under the fluorescent lights, ears twitching at every sound, nose working tirelessly to parse the sea of scents. They were on a routine patrol, the kind of shift Ava expected to be uneventful. 6 years on the K-9 unit had taught her that most days ended the way they began, quiet, forgettable, forgotten by dinner. But Bolt had a way of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. As they passed a row of ATMs built into a gray steel utility wall, Bolt suddenly froze. His muscles tensed, his ears pinned back, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Before Ava could react, he let out a sharp, piercing bark that cut through the terminal's din like a knife. Ava's heart skipped. Bolt never barked without reason. "Easy, buddy," she murmured, tightening her grip on the leash, but Bolt's focus was locked on the wall itself, his nose pressed to a seam in the steel just beside the last machine. A security guard, noticing the commotion, hurried over. "Everything okay?" he asked, eyeing Bolt warily. Ava shook her head. "He's alerting on that panel. I need someone from maintenance now." The guard frowned. "That's just the utility access for the ATMs, wiring and cash lines." Bolt growled louder, scratching at the base of the wall. Ava's tone hardened. "Then get it open." A small crowd began to gather, travelers clutching their phones, unsure whether they were witnessing a bomb scare or something stranger. Within minutes, a maintenance worker arrived, toolbox in hand. He crouched beside the panel, unscrewing it with metallic clanks that echoed in the tense silence. Ava kept one hand near her holstered weapon, the other steadying Bolt, whose whole body had gone taut as a drawn bow. Something in the air felt wrong, a faint, acrid smell drifting out from the gap that made her stomach twist. When the panel finally came free, it revealed a narrow service crawl space behind the machines, barely 3 feet high, meant for technicians to run cable. A foul stench rolled out of it, stale air trapped for hours. Bolt let out another bark, his body rigid with alarm. The maintenance worker shined a flashlight into the opening, then jumped back with a gasp. Curled against the far wall of the crawl space was a small child, no more than 5 years old. She was pressed into a ball, her face streaked with tears, her clothes filthy and matted. She flinched from the sudden light, her brown eyes wide with terror, too exhausted even to cry out. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Ava's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping to her knees at the opening. "Hey, sweetheart, you're safe now," she murmured, reaching in slowly, palm up, the way she'd been trained to approach a frightened animal, and a frightened child wasn't so different. Bolt, sensing the shift in her voice, softened his posture and lay down flat, making himself small. He sniffed the girl's hand lightly, his tail giving a tentative wag. Slowly, her small fingers uncurled and brushed his fur, and something in her shoulders let go. The security guard stood frozen. I'll call paramedics." Ava nodded, not taking her eyes off the girl. "And seal this terminal. Nobody leaves without giving a statement." As paramedics arrived to lift the girl onto a stretcher, the terminal buzzed with hushed conversation and worried whispers, phones raised, strangers asking each other what they'd just seen. Ava walked beside the stretcher as far as the jet bridge doors, wanting badly to stay with the child, to keep telling her she wasn't alone. But duty pulled her back toward the wall. She crouched beside Bolt again, letting him sniff along the length of the crawl space opening. His hackles were still raised, his eyes darting with restless energy, refusing to settle. "Good boy," she breathed, scratching him behind the ear. He licked her hand once, then turned his nose toward the next access panel down the row, letting out a low, insistent growl. The security guard gave Ava a wary glance. "You think there's another one in there?" Ava pressed her lips together. "If Bolt's reacting, I'm not walking away from it." "Open it, this time." No one hesitated. The panel came off in under a minute. Behind it, only dusty cable runs and a technician's forgotten clipboard. Relief rippled through the group, but Bolt didn't relax. His body stayed tense, his gaze sweeping the terminal like he could feel something bigger moving just out of sight. Within the hour, Federal Agent Marcus Lee arrived, his suit crisp, his expression grim. He listened as Ava walked him through it, his jaw tightening with every detail. "A child hidden in an airport wall," he repeated quietly. "That's not opportunity, that's planning, that's a system." Ava agreed. Bolt thinks there's more. "I don't know if they've used this crawl space before or if there are others like it, but she didn't end up in there by accident." Marcus moved fast, pulling every favor he had to get eyes on the terminal's security footage. Ava joined him in a cramped back office lit by a wall of monitors, the air thick with burnt coffee. Hour after hour of footage rolled by, travelers hauling luggage, kids tugging on parents' sleeves, cleaning crews pushing carts. Then they saw him, a man in a maintenance uniform, moving with practiced calm toward the utility wall, glancing around before crouching low and slipping something out of sight. He walked away pulling a rolling toolbox, unhurried, like a man who'd done this before. Marcus paused the frame. He knew exactly where the camera blind spots were. We need a name, and we need to know who he's working for. Ava's jaw clenched. He left a 5-year-old sealed behind a wall in an active terminal. If Bolt hadn't smelled her, she doesn't make it through the night. They pushed the suspect's image out to every airport officer and local precinct in the region, but he was already gone, vanished, into the churn of 100,000 daily travelers. Meanwhile, the little girl was admitted to Harbor City General, dehydrated, in shock, but alive. A nurse stayed with her until a child advocate arrived, and for the first time in what the doctors guessed was almost 2 days, she slept. The next morning, Ava and Bolt returned to the airport with a full forensics team. They worked every utility access point in the terminal, one by one, uncovering smudged boot prints, a discarded juice box, a child's hair tie wedged in a hinge. Each small find tightened the knot in Ava's chest. Whoever was behind this wasn't improvising. They were exploiting the one thing airports have in abundance, chaos, and the assumption that nobody looks twice at a man in a uniform. A break came from an off-duty baggage handler who recognized the suspect from the circulated still. He remembered watching the man disappear down a staff-only corridor 2 days earlier, toolbox in tow. Bolt picked up a trail from there, nose to the concrete, leading them to a locked storage bay in a forgotten corner of the cargo wing. Inside, folded blankets, half-empty water bottles, a child's drawing on a torn napkin, and a notepad with routes, dates, and the word cargo circled twice. Marcus read through it, his face hardening with every page. This isn't one airport. They've been moving kids through a network of them. By that night, a multi-agency task force had stood up, working phones and warrants around the clock. Ava and Bolt were pulled into the center of it. When intelligence flagged a possible handoff at Bridgeview Airport 2 states over, they moved. Bolt's nose cut straight through a maze of parked freight and led the team to a shipping container tucked behind a gated cargo yard. Inside, huddled together in the dark, were 4 more children, frightened, dehydrated but breathing. The relief on that tarmac was almost too much to hold, but it came laced with fury. Every child they found was proof of how far this had already gone. As agents fanned out to secure the yard, someone spotted the original suspect trying to slip through a gap in the fence line. Bolt didn't wait for a command. He closed the distance in seconds and brought the man down hard. Ava was on him a moment later, cuffs closing tight. "Where are the rest of them?" she demanded, breathing hard. The man said nothing at first, then gave up a name, then another. Each one cracked the network open a little further. Over the following week, arrests rippled outward. A freight coordinator, a shift supervisor, a man who'd never once been suspected, because he always looked like he belonged. In the days that followed, local news ran story after story calling Ava and Bolt heroes. But for Ava, the real victory wasn't the headlines. It was watching rescued children reunited with families, or placed with people who would finally keep them safe. She went back to visit the little girl from the airport wall, Bolt trotting in ahead of her like he already knew the way. The girl's eyes lit up the moment she saw him, and for the first time since the terminal, a real smile broke across her face. "You're safe," Ava told her gently, crouching down to her level. "And we're not going to stop until every kid like you is." A week later, the department held a small ceremony. Ava stood at the front with Bolt beside her, facing a room of colleagues, officials, and a few of the families whose children were now home. The chief pinned a commendation to her jacket, praising her instincts and her partner's nose in the same breath. Cameras flashed. People clapped. Bolt, mildly baffled by all the fuss, gave one polite wag of his tail and looked up at Ava as if to ask when they could go back to work. That night, worn out but strangely at peace, Ava sank onto her couch at home. Bolt curled up against her feet with a long, contented sigh, his eyes drifting shut. She let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for a week, thinking about the 5 children now sleeping in real beds instead of concrete and steel. "You're something else, you know that?" she said quietly. Bolt's ear twitched, his tail giving one last lazy thump against the floor. They were a team, an officer who refused to look away, and a dog who refused to stop pulling at a thread until the truth came loose. As Ava switched off the lamp, she reminded herself this wasn't over. Somewhere out there, more names were still waiting to surface, knowing that one dog's bark in one ordinary terminal had unraveled a network built entirely on nobody looking twice.